Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Neon Genesis Evangelion. This time we're going with episode 21, and this has taken way longer than it should have. But unforeseen issues are very much unforeseen, so let's just get right to it. This is an interesting episode because it takes place in 3, 4, 5, or 6 different timelines. There are time jumps in between everything that's happening in this episode. And by the way, just in case you couldn't tell from the box art that I had showed you in the intro, we are looking at the director's cut. So if you're watching the original and wondering what the hell am I talking about, a lot of this stuff is only in the director's cut, and a lot of the cut stuff will be in the first theatrical movie they have, Death and Rebirth. So we tread a lot of ground. The opening happens. This is where we get different with this show, because the intro is not the theme song for this episode. The intro is actually two different people or two different conversations happening at the same time while second impact is happening. And it's a very interesting argument to hear, because you have to listen to one over the other, and if you watch the subtitle version, you'll have two different sets of subtitles, one in blue, one in yellow, or at least in the ADV version that I'm reviewing. So you'll have like one conversation drowning out the other, and at the same time they're talking about two different things. One is talking about, oh, what are we doing? The other one's talking about, what's happening. And it's all done in very simple visuals. You're not actually seeing what's going on. You're watching a monitor while these two different conversations are happening. So it's kind of interesting in that way. And I kind of really enjoy it, especially if you can drown out the two different arguments that are happening at the same time. But yeah, that's this. And then the show goes into the current times, where Kaji is having some type of existential crisis, and he has to let the audience know that whatever he's doing now will probably end up in him not being Nerve anymore. So let's get to the first title sequence of this episode. It's called Nerve is Born. Okay, this episode starts off in the current times, and like I said, we go to Kaji's story. There's a story involving Masato that's kind of really messed up, just because we find out that in between episode 20 and 21 that Professor Fuyusuke has been kidnapped. Now this leads to the whole thing about, and this is where this episode kind of gets interesting, because characters who really didn't have backstories before get flushed out here. Not only that, but we learn about a lot of the other things that characters were doing before episode 1. This introduces Gehern, which is the child to become eventually Nerve. This also ties in Adam, the first angel. This ties in Yui. We finally get to see her on screen. Yui Ikari, Gendo's wife, Shinji's mom. We find the introduction of Professor Akagi, Ritsuko's mom. We find out how the Magi system was invented, who did it, and we get an introduction into how Rei came to being, more or less, or how she was introduced to Nerve. So A lot of the episode takes place in flashbacks, flash forwards, but not in present time. Like we'll get stuff where Fuyusuki's introduced to Gendo Rakabundi, Gendo Akari later on. We see Fuyusuki being introduced to Yui Akari, and we see the birth of Gahern and where things go with that. There's a lot of interesting stuff for an episode that's a little bit over 35 minutes, I believe. They're really cramming in a lot of exposition while trying to keep you engaged with the current storyline, i.e. Professor Fuyusuki is being kidnapped and he has to give this testimony of what he saw between Second Impact, the aftermath of Second Impact, and everything like that. And he's doing it to Sally. But it's a lot of stuff like that. And we find out that Professor Fuyusuki wasn't on board with Gahern/Nerve from the start. He actually had deep, regressions against it. But unfortunately, we also find out, a lot like the other characters, he has a fascination with another main character. So we get that stuff. We also get the introduction of Misato and how she was introduced to Ritsuko. And we actually get a pretty funny scene, or pretty interesting scene, where we see Ritsuko with brown hair or purple hair, which is kind of funny because throughout all the other episodes, we know her as a blonde. There's no explanation for what the hair coloring is, but I guess it's to symbolize how she went from being a child to being an adult. So, there is a kind of weird sequence where Fuyusuki is like, "Oh, I'm gonna tell the world about what you're doing, Gendo," and Gendo just goes, "Okay, let me show you what I'm doing. Do you want to jump on board now?" I will say this, Fuyusuki does not come off easy in these episodes because he does kind of come off as a creeper, because you can tell he has a fascination for Yui Akari. And while I've heard it talked about how, oh, that's bad that he has a romantic interest in his best friend's girl, he's not Gendo's best friend. He's there just by convenience, in all honesty. There is no, "Oh, me and you are comrades." It's like, kind of, you have me over a barrel, I don't really like you, but let's do it anyway. So, I kind of watched that under the bridge, so that's kind of the first part. Let's go to the second part. In episode 21, he was aware that he was still a child. Okay, this episode's more about Ritsuko and her finding about Gendo, her mom, Masato. Like, there's this whole sequence where she's writing a letter to her mom about, "Oh, I found out about this girl named Katsuragi, Masato," and all she does is sleep with Kaji, and she was mute for a while, and how she just doesn't stop talking. And then Ritsuko's mom writes her back, "Oh, I don't think you understand how human beings work." Listen, this is a part where I don't think Hideaki Anno knows how human conversations work. So, this is kind of an awkward scene because I don't think real people would have this type of conversation. Then again, I've had some weird ass conversations with people, so I kind of believe it. But it is actually odd. In this part we see how Yui entices Fuyutsuki to join NERV, and throughout it all, we are finding out that the predecessor to NERV was this group called Gehern. And actually, it really all changed just because of one happening. I won't say it is because you should see the episode, but yeah, it's very strong there. We get the introduction of how Rei came into being. Not so much, because while Rei is introduced to the Gehern staff, no one knows anything about her, and that causes complication. There's a very interesting scene between Ritsuko's mom and Rei, where I think it kind of needs to be seen to really get the full impact of it. And it is a lot of fun. It also is quite disturbing, and it also starts to transition between where we go from Gehern to NERV. All this the while Fuyutsuki is trapped. He gives his deposition to Seele, and eventually he is told he can go back. Meanwhile, Fuyutsuki tells Kaji, yeah, you're gonna get killed. So the episode kind of ends with this whole big arc of Kaji speaking to someone, something happening, and then that's it. And then, Masato listens to a tape recording or a voice message that Kaji leaves her. And that's about it. This episode covers a lot of ground in like a little time. Yeah, it goes back and forth, and none of it's really jarring. A lot of it is just introducing you or kind of explaining why this character's here, how this happened, how this happened. And it's really engaging. And because of the fact it's not a clip episode, it is a lot of fun. It does leave with a ending that is kind of stifling, because while Kaji's not in the show that much, he does leave an impact on other characters, and it does introduce a lot of themes, and it opens up the world for Fuyutsuki. He's not just the right-hand man of Gendo. He's an actual person who has a lot to do with it. This is a lot of character development, and this is what the show's good at, because characters happen to be there, but then they'll be introduced or given motivation later on. They're not just characters to be characters. This is a really good show. I would say watch this one, especially if you want to get into what the show is going towards in the future. I would also say watch the director's cut. It's much more expletive than the original TV version of it, so I'll leave that with that. So that's it for now. Hopefully I'll get to episode 22 sooner than I got to this one. And also in the comment section below, there'll be a video from Jeff's YouTube channel, who decided to record himself taking a train, and it's actually kind of funny. He needs to learn how to edit, but then again, so do I. Due to legal reasons, he's not here with me today, and he probably won't be doing a couple of reviews with me. But yeah, definitely follow him, like, subscribe. Talk to you later, and NERV is born. Talk to you.